today's episode of Thoughts from the Underground that no one's listened to, even not me. I want to rant and shout about many things that I was thinking about this morning. First of all, I don't know why my chair is making this noise. Hopefully it's going to stop making it because I can't even sit comfortably when I'm recording. So I need to sit in some kind of a forward-leaning awkward position because every time that I try to go back, it's doing this squeaky noise. And I guess WD-40 might help, but I'm not sure. So, excuse me. The first idiotic headline from The Guardian. The Guardian. New research reveals King George IV IV profited from slavery in Grenada. Experts say finding heightens pressure on the monarchy to confront its historical links to slavery. Oh, well. We're talking about 1823 to 24. So, they're talking about a document they found in 1823 in the National Archives in London, revealing 1,000 sterling payment from Crown-owned estates in Grenada, where hundreds of enslaved people labored in the 18th and 20th century. The funds were paid into King George IV's private coffers and contributed to his lavish lifestyle. No fucking way. Are you serious? Color me shocked. Unbelievable. I can't believe it. Really? Really? Did George IV, the King of England, really profited from slavery? Honestly, I can't believe I'm reading The Guardian in the year 2025 and this is what you're talking about. I mean, why is this even... I'm not a history major. I'm actually not a major of anything because I quit school when I was like 15 and a half. And a half is half a week. So I read history, some because I'm a curious person and obviously saw a movie or two and spoke to some people and read some websites. And if I'm not mistaken, slavery was a pretty practiced system since men started to form societies. And it's no surprise to me that the British Empire, like all the European nations who were colonizing, also profited from slavery. And yes, also the kings and queens of those nations profited from slavery. Like, what is that even? Why is that even a discussion right now? Like, what is this? Like, right now, basically, all those countries who were exploited as slaves, like their population are basically descendant of slaves, they now need to go back to the colonizers' countries and demand reparations. So in that case, let me tell you, every country on the planet needs to go to some other country and ask for money because in the past, each freaking country was occupying another country. And if I'm not mistaken, even Switzerland had a period where it tried to be expressionist, but I'm not quite sure. I don't remember. I remember something in the 1800s. They were like, okay, we're not with that. We're not down with that. And then they became a great but like, are you serious? The whole Bible is full of slavery. The whole like Old Testament is full of slavery. Now descendant of Israelites needs to go to Egypt and ask for reparations. What kind of like freaking 12-step program are we living it that the countries that were colonizers, because that was it back then. There was a king and a queen and they dominated like everybody and everybody lived like shit because that was the system, right? And they had armies, they paid people, and those people, they told them, listen, here, I'm giving you whatever sterling, and you go, I'm giving you 1,000, and you go and you conquer everything, and you bring me back the gold and the silver and the women and the men so I can enslave them. What do you think that was about? Do you think it was about, oh no, you go discover a new species of flowers in India? No. So why now the colonizer countries needs to go through a 12-step program of double A and go and apologize to every person they ever heard it as if they did something wrong? No, they haven't. I mean, yes, it's not morally correct. What the hell was that noise in my fridge? It's not morally correct to enslave other people and to kill other people. It's not. But it's happening still to this day. There are people, there are nations who are being enslaved and nobody's saying anything. North Korea is an example. Maybe they're not being enslaved by another country, they're being enslaved by their own modern day king. But why now the British people needs to feel guilty about what happened 200 years ago, 400 years ago, 300 years ago, because they just did what was the custom of the times. It's not like they woke up and said, oh, we should have. No, the world is mean, especially back in the day. And you're either the conqueror or you're either the conqueree. What do you think it's all about? You guys are out of your mind. Why is that even in the news freaking paper? Why is that even in the Guardian? I don't know who is it Guardian, but it's a Guardian. Why is that? What is this nonsense? I don't understand. Like, why everybody needs to feel guilty now? The Germans needs to feel guilty for. No, they should not celebrate it. Yes, that's fucked up what they did to the Jews. I'm a Jew. Maybe I'm not. I'm not a practicing Jew. I'm not a model Jew, but based on Judaism, I'm Jewish because my mother and my mother of my mother and my mother of my mother and my mother from both sides was Jewish. As far as I know, even though my DNA tests show some other countries, I don't know, maybe one of my step granddaddies or because I have some Finland and I have some Spain, so maybe they're like hot for blonde chicks from Finland. I don't know, but each DNA service gives me different results, so I'm not sure which to believe, because one side gives me a lot of Spanish And by a lot, I mean about 10% from the Iberian Peninsula, and then some other one gives me some Finland. And I'm like, wow. So, anyway, where was I? Yeah, that's fucked up. Yes, it happens. This is how human nature is. This is how mammals are. Have you ever seen cats in nature in the wild? What they do to each other? Have you ever seen wolves? What they do to each other? What they do to other mammals? Have you ever seen monkeys? And I'm not comparing human beings, but we're not better. We're animals. I mean, excuse me, okay? I mean, I'm not saying there is no God or there is a God. That's not my discussion. I'm not here to insult anybody. But just you just have to read some history, not all of it, and you can choose whatever source of history, whatever his book of history, and then at some point it's going to be a war and people are going to die, and then war, and then 300 years the Chinese Empire was flourishing and la 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 war, and then the tribe of Bulu Bulu from Africa and the tribe of Baga Baga were living peaceful war, and then the king of Egypt and and the princes of Sudan lived happily. War. What do you think it's all about? That's human nature. Where I live, it's maybe 10 houses, and most of them are vacation houses in southern Italy, and that means that people come here for 1 or 2 months or 3 months or whatever for the summer season, and then they go back north. And I'm here all year because it works for me. But most people here, they don't live here. There's a lot of places like that in Italy where people like it's kind of like summer houses or whatever. They come for the vacation, for the sea, for the beach. Excuse me, and then they go. And there's still fighting between them. And it's not even their permanent habitat. So why the English needs to apologize? Okay, you can recognize and say, "Oh man, it's some fucked up shit we did back then, and I'm sorry. It's not my great father grandfather. What can I do? I can't control what they did. I mean, okay, what do you want me to do? Put some Vaseline, bend over? No, you got to move on. Have you ever been depressed? You spoke to a friend of yours, you broke up with a girlfriend, and you went to a friend of yours and you started drinking and talking and smoking, and they would tell you the first thing, bro, you got to move on. Because we need to move on to the future from bad things. We can't just, oh, now I need to go back. This life is not running a country, running society is not a 12-step program that you now need to go and apologize to every person. I mean, it's nice. Hey, man. Hey, Gardena. Hey, Caribbean Islands. I'm UK and I apologize for all the fucked up shit we did to you. Oops, what can I do? I mean, it happened like 300 years ago. I have no control over it, but I feel you. I feel your pain. I have solidarity with you. I'm not doing it again, and I'll try not to do it in the past. And that's it. What do you want me to do now? It's not the responsibility of the British people now to start. That's what I'm saying. And the same thing I'm saying that, I mean, as someone who is technically Jewish or was born in Israel, I mean, just freaking leave the German people alone. All right? Just leave them alone already. The Germans has been through a lot since the war ended. And I mean, if you go to Germany or Austria, and that's only my personal experience, they still talk about the war, the Second World War. I mean, they're so traumatized by what happened from so many directions. Like one direction is their national pride, and one direction is like the amount of f up stuff that they did that they feel guilty about, and they still discuss it. Not every day, not like in, but it still comes up in conversations, and they still have, let's say in Vienna, they still have those huge circular buildings that were built at the order of Hitler all over Vienna, and I'm not sure if it's also in Germany, but that or other places, but I know specifically in Vienna, and those buildings were supposed to be anti-aircraft positioned. There were, and these are like huge circular buildings, a few stories high, which were back then pretty high, and it's basically a bunker. They used to store ammunition over there and shoot down airplanes. And to date, they cannot destroy those structures, and they're just sitting there, being some of them being converted to whatever they can do, and some of them they try to explode them and they could not. They failed, so they can't even like use them now, and they just sits there, you know, with wooden. I mean, you can't enter, and it just sits there and reminds everybody about the war. So you have a bunch of those structures all over Vienna, and I'm sure other places have structures that reminds them of the war. And every time they find and you discover a new bomb from the war that hasn't been exploded. So I feel like those nations has already paid generational guilt, and I'm not downplaying what happened in the World War II, but that's human nature. I'm not saying it's okay. I'm just saying we got to move on. I'm just saying, the Jews got to forgive the Germans and move on. And you can't, like, the Germans also helped Israel and helped the Jews after the war for many years, and a lot of money has been paid from both Austria and Germany, and I believe other countries, to the state of Israel and to individuals who were affected by the Holocaust. And again, I want to emphasize it. I'm not downplaying it, but I'm saying, hey, they try to make up for what they did. The Mongolians never compensated no one for Genghis Khan, who basically destroyed large amount of people to a point when they drill down and they see the traces of CO2 and oxygen. They have a way to see that in the layer of ground material when they drill down and examine it, and they have a way to see that at the period where Genghis Khan was active and killing people, there was less pollution, there was less CO2 in the planet, meaning the amount of people he killed was so large compared to the amount of people that it affected the amount of CO2 that has been absorbed into those rocks. If you get what I'm saying, I'm sure if you look it up online, you can see it, you can read about it. But I don't see anyone compensating no one the way the Austrian people and the German people compensated and helped the Jews and the state of Israel. And I mean, they should be recognized for that to date. So I don't know, and each individual also need to do stuff that is going to create some kind of reconciliation. Meaning, for me, having an Austrian passport, I'm grateful for that, and I've spent a couple of years over there, and I learned. I went to German classes. I'm not proficient, but I came to learn the language, and I mean, I think it's a beautiful language. Uh, I think it's much more complex and interesting than English, no disrespect. And even like simple words are sometimes very poetic. Let's say the sea level is not called the sea level. It's called the Meerspiegel, if I'm not Sea Spiegel, if I'm not mistaken. There is a word for that. I mean, I think it's Meerspiegel or Sea Spiegel. Basically, it's the mirror of the ocean. It's a beautiful language, and all the rules and how it's constructed. I'm not going to go into that right now. But I have made I've made efforts to go and and learn about the culture that once or maybe also today hates me, and I think that's a step in the right direction. I'm not trying to, sorry about the noise, to patronize, but I'm just giving an example. So I guess what I'm saying over here is that we got to look forward and do stuff that is actively peaceful towards bringing people together, and not go and play the blame game. Wow, that was way more than what I wanted to go about that. Um, but yeah, that's 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 what I wanted to say about this nonsense of history and people twisting it the wrong way, because it's horrible. I think it's stupid. It's really stupid. We got to move on. We can't stay in the past, even though the context of the story of history of the Geschichte is what help us. Without it, we feel kind of lost if we don't have the story of where we came from and what was the past of our people, of ancestors. I mean, so it creates people who feel kind of lost. I mean, who am I in this planet? And that's why it's very easy to sell stuff to people through stories. Every good salesperson is also a good storyteller, because people love stories. It gives them something to hold on to, and oh wow, there's that. That's why the Old Testament is such a popular book worldwide, and it has been so influential, in my opinion, on so many people, because the stories, they were like phenomenal. Like you read, imagine, when you, in the time when there's no TV, there's nothing, there's like people basically, 2000, 3000 before Christ. Imagine life, like technologically, what do you have? And then somebody tells you the story of Adam and Eve. That's for you, that's like freaking, that's like seeing the Ghostbusters for the first time when you're like 5 years old. It blows your mind away. So those stories were so classic, and people still enjoy reading them to date. They still enjoy reading, there's still people still talking about those stories from the Bible and use them as examples, because those stories were strong. They were like really beautiful, beautiful literature. It's beautiful stories. The ancient Jews were most likely good storytellers, and I mean, they also probably, I don't know, use those stories to. Anyway, I'm not sure what I want to say in the last sentence, but because I was thinking about something else with the Jews. Um, but anyway, speaking about the Old Testament, so not so many people know that, or maybe they do, I don't know. But in my opinion, um, there are two different Jewish religions. I'm not talking about streams. I'm not talking about one Orthodox stream that dress like they're in Eastern Europe, in Poland, in the winter, in the year 1335, on a hot summer day with the same clothes now. I'm not talking about those people which are Orthodox, and then you have different stream of Judaism, and I forgot how they call them, but they allow women to be rabbis and basically do whatever you want with the. So I'm not talking about those two different streams. What I'm talking about is, so yeah, first there were the Old Testament and the Jews who sat in Judea and Israel, the kingdom of Israel, and the Old Testament, where you have basically in some places in this book explains to you, and please excuse me because I'm not Orthodox and I've never been and I never really studied it really good, but this is from what I know. You really have places like, okay, where, like you need to cut how you should, I don't know, treat your slaves, how you should, and where you should give, how do you say it? Like, victims, like when you take a cow and make a sacrifice to God with this cow, I don't know, in the temple in Jerusalem. That's basically what they used to do over there. There used to be a butcher. It was a large butchery, and they used to bring cows and goats and sacrifice it to God to please God. Believe it or not, and that was the spiel, right? And then when the Jews were expelled from the land of Israel and Judea, and the kingdom of Israel, by the Babylonians, they were expelled to different countries and ran away. Then they started creating basically in my opinion, a second religion, which is based on top of the Old Testament, but these are additional books, Talmud, it's called Talmud, and then so what I'm trying to say is, and again, I forgot the names. I think I'm having some kind of a youth Alzheimer, but today I forgot the names. The Mishnah, right? They have Talmud and Mishnah, and they basically created those new books after the Old Testament. And these books are less of, like, they also have stories, but it's basically a different structure of books. It's not that basically created more of what Judaism is today, and in my opinion that led to a different religion. Because if you think about it, if you look how Orthodox Jews look today, do you really believe that they were walking in the desert for 40 years dressed up like they're in the winter in Poland or in Latvia or whatever, or in Russia, and have this kind of hairstyle, walking in the desert for 40 years? Maybe that's why they walked for 40 years. I don't know, because they couldn't. If you dress like that with a coat and an undercoat and a suit, and And the time, maybe because the distance between Egypt and Israel is not that far, maybe that's why they took it 40 years when I think about it right now. But, and again, I'm not trying to disrespect Jews. I'm just saying, no, most likely they were not dressed up like that. Most likely they were dressed up with some kind of a blanket with their dingling free in the wind because it was freaking hot, even back then, because it's a desert. So I believe that the evolution of the Jewish religion has created a new religion on top of the Old Testament in some kind of way. And I'm not drawing a parallel, I'm just saying Christianity has two books. It has the Old Testament and the New Testament, and then it's called together the Bible. And there is a religion that's called Christianity. And again, I'm not disrespecting, I'm just describing. And then at the same time, by my understanding, also in the Quran, you have many stories from the Old Testament incorporated into the book. And even, people are mentioned from the Old Testament, Moses and so forth, and Abraham, and they're mentioned in the Quran. And then they added stories to that, or, I mean, again, I'm not trying to disrespect. And then they created Quran. I believe that also the Old Testament and the Jews that were living all over the world and created and also in Jerusalem, and created the Mishnah and the Talmud on top of the Old Testament, and created, because they're not practicing what's in the Old Testament today, and they have more emphasis on what's, like, they don't have slaves, they're not taking cows and goats to Jerusalem to sacrifice, even though they would love to. I know some of them would love to, but I'm just saying they adjusted some of the stories. So I don't know, man. I don't know. This whole thing, I mean, I believe that the Jews today, yeah, maybe they're a descendant of the Jews, back then, but I believe the religion is not the same, and I believe the customs some of them are not the same, and they added a lot of stuff. I don't know. I mean, listen, one of the happiest um, holidays in Judaism is Hanukkah, and it involves lights, and it happened just to be around Christmas. I don't know. I mean, listen, I'm not Sherlock Holmes, but I feel like, I don't know, in some kind of way they were kind of like, man, look at those Christians, they're celebrating Christmas like that. We got to bring some. I don't know. I don't know. I'm just observing. These are just observations. Maybe they're not the most educated observations, but I'm trying to be very careful with what I'm saying. Uh, I'm just saying that we got to move forward, and including in that also, maybe the Jewish religion also need to move forward. And yes, the world needs to move forward, and people needs to stop, like people from the Caribbean and Africa needs to stop like blaming the white man in all their troubles, and also in South America. Like, we need to move forward out of that. You can't be the victim all the time. It's not contributing nothing to you. And the current people who lives in Europe, they don't need to pay nobody, no one, nobody, nothing, to no one. Everybody needs to move forward from now on. You got that? No, seriously. I think if everybody's going to say, all right, boop, we're starting brand new, we're moving forward to build a future for this planet because it's getting destroyed. But people are not going to do it because people are just obsessed with whatever they're obsessed with. And I don't know. I don't know. I have nothing to say. I reached a dead end with my thoughts. I said most of the stuff that were in my mind this morning. And I'm just going to drink more coffee and go on with my day. That's about it.